Welcome to the only daily podcast focusing on compliance news of the day. Each morning, start your day with a cup of coffee and Tom Fox, the voice of compliance, to hear about 4 of the top compliance, corruption, or leadership stories you will need to start your day. The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network.
First, a word from our sponsor. The Daily Compliance News for January 12, 2023, the All 3 Paid Me Bribes edition. And we begin with that story from Bloomberg, that the former head of international trade at Ecuador's state oil company testified that he had been bribed by 3 of the world's largest commodity trading companies as a sprawling investigation into corruption in the global oil trade plays out in New York. The testimony from Nielsen Arias, who until 2017 was the international trade manager at Petro Ecuador, is the first to publicly implicate Trafigura Group, the world's second largest independent oil trader. Vitol Group, the world's largest, admitted in 2020 to paying bribes, while the Gunvor Group has disclosed it faces a current investigation and has booked up to a $650 million provision for the payment of a fine and penalty. The claim will put additional pressure on Trafigura. And if they haven't self-disclosed, boy, you don't want to get self-disclosed in the middle of a criminal trial. Next up, sad news for the legal law firm, the UK law firm, Clyde Co, well-known global firm, but they were fined £500,000 on Thursday for repeated breaches of money laundering regulations relating to a long-standing client. The firm admitted it failed to conduct adequate due diligence on the shipping industry client identified only as Company A in relation to 14 transactions between 2014 and 2018. Clyde & Co. said it sincerely regrets any compliance failings. Next up, a very interesting op-ed piece from Jennifer Rubin, particularly coupled with President Trump's admission that he provided services to China for some of the $8 million he was paid while as president. Obviously, that's admitting he performed services for China while president of the United States. And she posits that this needs to be more fully investigated, and additionally, his corruption should be front and center. Hard to believe it's not, but with him admitting that, of course, he was paid for services rendered, pretty clear things were not very hunky-dory in the White House. And our final story comes to us from the New York Times, which reports that the SEC social media hack that sent Bitcoin soaring has prompted an internal investigation by the SEC's Office of Inspector General and the FBI. It quotes John Reed Stark, who said that the Inspector General needs to investigate how a hacker was able to access the SEC official's account on Twitter to post a false message going forward. So more trouble for the SEC. The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network and a proud member of C-Suite Radio. Thanks so much for listening. I hope you'll join me again tomorrow.